Sweet. Oh well, hello. I'm Stephen Linton, and today we're going to be talking about designing for mixed reality because it's awesome and it's what I do. I've been making games for a long time. I was one of the co-founders of Cerebral Fix down in Christchurch. So I've been making games for about 15 years. But I actually made my first mixed reality game back in 2002 at the University of Canterbury. We had a 320 by 200 headset. We had a web camera duct taped to the front of it. And I have to say it was pretty good. We made a 4-player game. It required 5 computers to run. It used markers back in the day. You can see up in the top corner some screenshots. I learned how to 3D model and animate for it. Yeah, it was interesting. And we ported Team 17's Worms to mixed reality, thinking that'd be a great game. Not a great game to port to mixed reality. Little tiny guys on this little terrain. It looks really cool, really, really hard to interact with. But it did give me a taste for what the future held for mixed reality, and I only had to wait 21 years for Meta to make the Quest, and I was like, sweet. And basically the same day that the Quest 3 came out, I spun out Fantail Games from Cerebral Fix. So yeah, I have been around for a while, but I've been making games for other people. I have not worked on my own IP before. This is my first opportunity. But there's nothing wrong with working on client games. I've worked with some really great people over the years and learned lots of skills and how to design for big clients with big IPs that they want to keep precious. So yeah, I guess that set me up nicely for running my own studio. I've worked with Disney for about 10 years. They're probably our main client at Cerebral Fix. And my highlight game, because I'm a massive Avatar nerd, yeah, it was only a 3-month project, but it was the three best months of my 15 years. It was great. Just would have been nicer if it was longer. So yeah, designing other people's games, you do learn a lot of skills. Learn not to design for yourself. I've made a lot of match 3 games. Tower defense games. Actually, I like tower defense games. Actually, I like match 3 games too. I'm weird like that. I've made some slot machines. Actually, a lot of the stuff in the keynote this morning, I was like, oh yeah, I've done a lot of that stuff. In fact, the last time I was here doing a talk, they wrote me into doing a panel on why Flash is dead. And I was like, what? I'm still using Flash. What's wrong with Flash? Yeah, apparently it's gone. Anyway, yeah, so learn how to design for making money, learn how to not take risks because you have to deliver on time to budget and the client isn't going to change. You learn how to design for the client while still trying to make a game that's good for players. So yes. And then I was like, right, I'm going to take everything I've learned and not do any of that. We're going to make something in mixed reality and we're going to break all the rules and we're going to make something for myself. And people, not clients. And so we've come up with a game called Game Night. It is a mixed reality party game where you run around the room, chasing each other around, having lots of fun. It's going early access in November. So if I sound frazzled, it's because I'm really frazzled. We're doing trailers, we're doing marketing, all this stuff at the moment. It's just doing my head in. But it's a very cool game and I'm very excited about it and to share the learnings that we've had through making it. So what is mixed reality? A lot of people still don't know, so it's sort of obligatory to have a slide of what is mixed reality. Apple just released their headset earlier in the year and they came up with their own terminology just to confuse things. They call things, spatial. But mixed reality is sort of halfway between VR and AR. It's AR that you can interact with and be immersed in. And for me, what makes mixed reality different to, say, virtual reality is, one, it's physical. You can move around without smashing into things. You can see each other. So it's also very, very social. And those are the two, really, those are the two takeaways from this entire talk. If you take away anything, it's that if you want to do something in mixed reality, take advantage of the fact that you can move around and take advantage of the fact that you can see the other people that you're playing the game with. Oh, and if you're going to do anything in mixed reality, make it multiplayer. I don't care what it is. If it's a cooking app, make it multiplayer so you can cook together. That's what's really special about it. The things that I think are closest to mixed reality, a lot of people are starting to have a go at building mixed reality stuff now, and they're porting platformers and beat 'em ups and classic PC type games. And I don't think that's the right approach. I think the best approach is to approach it from what works in sports and what works in board games. A really good board game is about the social dynamics that you have between players. And that's something that you can achieve really well in mixed reality. So that's sort of my approach. I'm approaching it less from what computer games work in mixed reality to what real games could be even better if digital was the thing. So the nice thing about designing for mixed reality is there's about 50 mixed reality games, like proper ones, not just VR games that turn pass-through on. There's a bunch of those, but honestly, they're just still VR games. Although apparently turning pass-through on in a VR game adds about 30% engagement, so still worth doing, but you are still designing with the constraints of VR, and that you don't really want to walk around too much because you're going to smack into things. Why designing for mixed reality is exciting is because, gosh, everything is an option. What could we make? You can reimagine all of the games that have ever been made over the, however long. Or if you get really lucky, you can invent something new. Wouldn't that be cool? You come up with your own Match 3, you come up with your own Tetris. If you want to build for mixed reality, there are obviously some headsets that support it. We've got the Quest 3, we've got the 3S, which came out this week. We've got the Pico, which is my next device down, which we'll be going to soon. And then we've got the very pretty, but very, very, very expensive Apple Vision Pro, which we also have one of, and we will be going to at some point, although our game is multiplayer. So yeah, good luck finding a few of those to play with at the same time. There's a lot of tools that you have already to utilize making it an immersive game. You've got hand tracking, full body tracking, eye tracking if you've got an Apple Vision Pro or a Quest Pro, but no one's got Quest Pros. You've got voice, so you can give commands and it can recognize them. Spatial anchors for synchronizing everybody's different play space, so everybody sees the same thing in the same place. Scene understanding, just understanding where the room is, so you can bounce things off the ceiling and off the furniture. And you can have baddies pop up from behind things, you can shoot them. Spatial audio is really good for just increasing the immersiveness. Meta added a new feature recently, which is really cool, and it creates a 3D model of the room, and therefore if your character is standing behind a real couch, it's muffled. It sounds really cool. It's like very cool. You've got depth, so if you hold up your hand in front of the scene, it's occluded properly. All of these things help to make your game more believable. So these features are, I guess, the basic building blocks that we're using to make our games. What does the future hold? So these are the things we can do now. Meta showed this off last month. That's their Orion AR glasses. I think they said they were like $10,000 each for the prototypes. My take is they're probably about 5 years off being mass market, but very, very cool technology. That wristband there can sort of listen to your arm or something, and it can detect how your fingers are moving, so you can subconsciously interact with the glass is very cool tech, but very far off. So whatever you're designing now, you might be designing for this, but you've got a while to figure it out. And Snap Spectacles, they're doing some really good stuff as well. My take is those two guys are going to be really strong, and we've got Niantic down the bottom there. They've got some cool headset stuff going on as well in Wellington. So yeah, if you want to get into the tech stuff, I'm a developer, probably mostly. I think of myself as a developer mostly. Everyone else thinks of me a designer because that's probably how they were introduced to me at Cerebral Fix, or at least the newer people. Yeah, I'm sort of a jack of all trades. But yeah, if you want to get into making stuff, Meta have a nice building blocks tool. You can just drag and drop into your Unity scene. I want pass-through, I want distance grab on an object, I want, I don't know, the effect mesh to put some visuals on the walls and stuff. You just drag and drop them in your scene, press play, and it works, which is pretty cool. And none of that existed when we started this time last year. Unfortunately, we had to figure out all of that stuff ourselves, and then just after we figured it all out, they were like, building blocks, this is cool, and we're like, okay, sure, that would have been useful 3 months ago. They do have a lot of samples. I like to learn by just hacking other people's code and figuring out how it works, and there's a lot of good samples. This one released last week. It's a co-located multiplayer party game, somewhat not unlike what we're doing. Also supports online play, so that's full source code. Very nice stuff. So to prove that you can build something, it's not all fancy advanced tech. We did a project with some second year students at Canterbury University. They made 2 games in 8 weeks from zero knowledge of mixed reality or VR or anything really. They're second years. This game here, pretty cool. You just hold your hand up like that, and as soon as you do the pinch, it would generate a dart in your hand. You can throw it, pop balloons. When you get 4 people doing that together in the same room, then it becomes competitive, and then it becomes really fun. Their other game, bombs would generate in the room, and then you would have to run behind shields to hide yourself from the bomb that was going off, and you could throw it at other people to try and get them. So yeah, very cool. So a metric that I heard recently from a mixed reality developer is something you can prototype in 1 to 2 weeks. It takes a year to get to launch. So while you can make a cool prototype that spawns a dart in your hand, to get that to the point where everybody can do it and it's seamless is a lot of work. Even you take all the building blocks that Meta have made, yeah, they're really good, they can get you going. They get to your 80% mark, and that last 20% takes forever if you want it to feel really seamless. So be warned, just because, well, we went through this process. This time last year, we're like, okay, cool. I know what I want to build. I want to build mixed reality. I don't actually have a game idea already. I just know I want to build mixed reality. So we went through a process of finding the game that we wanted to build. This is a design process that I've used for years and years and years. And if you want to know more about it, go to Nadia's talk of Dredge. She has mastered this, obviously. But basically, as a funnel, come up with lots and lots and lots of ideas, which is very easy in mixed reality because everything is possible, because nothing's been done yet. And then just filter it down into more refined things, more refined designs, and then into prototypes, and then build them, and then play test the crap out of them. The important step that Nadia will talk about is market research and validation. That's a real tricky bit in mixed reality because there's like 50 games. If you take all of the mixed reality games, there's like 20 good ones. So yeah, we've been chatting with Meta, and they're like, oh yeah, you should definitely be doing this stuff. It's great. It's using all our tools. And I'm like, yeah, cool. How do you think it's going to go? And they're like, I'm looking forward to finding out. You tell us. Okay. So yeah, we built a bunch of prototypes. We spent 3 weeks on each one. This was our first one. I wanted to try and capture the experience of building forts as a child, you know, building forts and putting little catapults down and blasting the other person's fort. Despite being a coder for about 15 years, somehow I have managed to get away with never doing networking. So we wanted to have networking in this, but I have cunningly put myself at the other end to make it look like it's got networking. It is not. It is just AI. But the concept comes across. So you've got a couple of mechanics, stacking, and you had to get your little king, and the higher he is, the more points he earns. So if you can knock him off, he'll stop earning points, and you can knock him off by hitting him with catapults or with the sling. So yeah, it was basically a Humpty Dumpty type game. You're going to try and knock off the king. So yeah, trying to play on nostalgia. This play tested really well, actually. We were pretty happy with it. People got really into the building part and would spend some people would spend a heck of a lot of time just putting together the perfect castle. So we'd have a preparation phase and then an attack phase. So you could sort of take as long as you liked over that. But yeah, we were really happy with it. The main challenge we had was with trying to tame Unity physics to do stacking. Once you get to sort of like 5 high, it starts to melt. And it's like things sliding through each other. And it's like, okay. And yeah, that's probably why we didn't go ahead with this one, because we would have had to probably use a different physics engine and figure out all the physics. And I'm like, that sounds hard. This was our third prototype. The second one is the one we went with, but this is the third one we made. This is sort of like a survival game. You got this little guy. He likes to look at you. Anytime you do anything in mixed reality, have the character, if there is one, make eye contact with you, because then you build this bond really quickly, and it's really cute. So the idea is you had this little guy and he knew nothing. He's just spawned and he doesn't know how to live, so you have to teach him how to do all the things. You have to teach him how to light fires, cut down trees, pick berries. So he would watch you and he would replicate what you do. So if you go like this on the berry bush, the berry will come off and you'll be like, oh, okay, I know how to do that now. And if you picked up the berry and put it in your mouth, he's like, oh, eating. Okay, cool. Now I know how to feed myself. And that was the premise here. And the idea would be that throughout the course of the game, it would terraform your room and you could explore different areas. All of which is very possible in mixed reality with the tools that exist at the moment. But what we quickly found with this game is that it's hard enough to make a mixed reality game without making a game design that's also quite complex. Gosh. Just try and solve one problem at a time. Yeah, we spent much longer just building the mechanics of this game than we did just trying to implement interesting mixed reality features. And at the end of the day, I mean, what is pass-through actually adding in this situation? Not a lot. It is sort of a VR game, and there are survival games that are along these lines already in VR. So we were like, okay. Oh, in fact, if you want to check out a game like this that's been made in mixed reality, it's really, really cool. Check this one out. It's basically The Borrowers. Little characters appear in your walls. Very cool. That was one of our other concepts, so I'm glad someone did it. So yeah, doing stuff in mixed reality is about 20% game design and 80% trying to figure out how to get people to do the actions that you want them to do. It's all new UX. All the UX you're familiar with on a computer, you can throw it out. We're not going to be doing UI. We're not going to be doing any of that. You're going to have to figure it out from scratch. The screenshots from MRTK, if anyone worked with that with the HoloLens back in the day, it is unfortunately now dead. Both the HoloLens and this tool, sadly. But yeah, our second prototype, which we made, we thought, okay, 3 weeks. We can make 4 mini games in 3 weeks that are co-located and multiplayer, because we'd figured out how to do co-location at this point. And we were quite pleased with it, actually. We made 4 games in 3 weeks. And we were like, sweet, this is definitely what we should be doing, because we spammed these out. It's not going to take long. We can build heaps of these, and in a year's time, we'll have a massive party game with a whole lot of things. So we are launching on November the 18th. These are the 4 games we did the prototype from last year, and our early access has 3 mini games in it. So we started with 4, and a year later we've got 3. How did that happen? Well, turns out it's quite hard, like really hard, to get that last 20% working nicely. The analogy I like is that, imagine you had a mouse and the button clicked 90% of the time. You would throw the mouse away. You would not keep the mouse. This is a broken mouse. And that's what mixed reality is like. It works. It doesn't work 90% of the time. It works 80% of the time. So yeah, there's a lot of work trying to get things to feel right. And if they don't feel right, it's probably not worth trying to fix it. It's probably worth rethinking it until, you know, the people who control the tools can solve those problems for you. So we were thinking, yep, this play tested extremely well. Everybody who played it was like, oh, yep, sweet, I understand this. It worked really well for a casual audience, which is interesting. I think Meta are quite interested in it because of the casual audience. It's not something VR has as much of. I think because it immerses you in another world, it's quite computery. But when you can still see the world around you, it feels quite comfortable to jump in. If things don't feel like UI, they feel like, well, we'll get onto that. Some boring slides. If you're interested in just my general design process, the first thing we did is we came up with our priorities. I don't know if you've been in a team, but sometimes when you get a really passionate team, they're like, I think we should do this feature. And the other person's like, oh, no, we should do this feature. And this is a nice way of, before you get to the design process, go, well, what are our actual priorities? What is the experience that we want to create for people, and prioritize them. So when you come up to a decision point in your game where you have a bit of an impasse, you can come back to the list and go, well, what's actually more important? Is this feature social dynamics? Because social dynamics is the most important thing in our game. If we have a feature that improves the social dynamics, we're doing it. Doesn't matter what the other thing is that we're talking about. It's more important. So I think this is a nice process, just a general game design thing. It works for me at least. And then we had a mini-game checklist. We wanted to make sure mini-games have a sense of progression. They don't feel the same at the beginning as they do at the end, or it'd be boring. We want to make sure they're short. That's important because the games are quite physical, and do please try it. But you'll find that if you play through once, you're feeling a bit tired. If you play through twice, you're definitely wanting to have a good sit down, because it is quite exhausting. Yeah, people do get a bit sweaty. That's right. I've got. So anyway, intuitive. We wanted everything to feel intuitive. We wanted people to be able to put on the game, not have to explain anything to them. They just understand what to do, how to win the game, how to lose the game. All our games can be played cooperatively or competitively. There's no mode. That's just something people can choose to do, because people do choose to do that. We found that early on with our balloon prototype. Some people just like passing the balloon between each other, and some people like to go all out. So yeah, we thought, well, we can support both. That won't make the design any harder. Oh, yes, it did. We make sure all our games have one interaction mechanic, because one's enough, really. One's enough for implementation point of view, and one is more than enough from the player's point of view. We've got a slapping game. That's the picture here. Well, I'll get onto that myself. Anyway, so I talked about UI before. We wanted to avoid all forms of UI. I didn't want this game to feel like a computer game. I wanted someone who's 65, 85, who's never played a computer game, to put on the headset and go, oh, that's a board game. I know how board games work. And that has worked out well for us, I would say. We've generally been able to put people in and they get the concept straight away, whether they're a gamer or not, because we're not really targeting gamers, we're targeting families. It has been a challenge though. There have been all sorts of weird and wonderful UX issues. So we've got this play button at the middle. The number of people who see the plates, the tables here, the play buttons here, they're like, so the button's way over there. Imagine the button is a real button in real life. You would not try and hit it from a... Why do people do that? It's very strange. I don't understand it. I haven't solved that problem either. They eventually figure it out, and it's a bit of a concern because if they don't figure that out, they're never going to play the game. Whoops. But we do have a little tutorial hand that goes down on it, a little ghost hand now to go, hey, look, there's a hand pushing the button. You know how you can push a button in real life? It's exactly the same as that. Anyway, the other challenge with doing a board is putting it on a table. That's actually really hard. So Meta give you the room layout, but typically most rooms have more than one table. Your table might have lots of rubbish on it. You don't know whether this is the dining table or the coffee table or a side table. They might not even have a table. So then we have to locate a fake table somewhere in the middle of the room. Finding the middle of the room is kind of hard. It's all complex, mathsy type things. That has been quite a challenge for us, to be honest. And I wanted it to be able to, you could go in seamlessly. There's not a first-time user experience step where it forces you to, okay, this is the tutorial. First thing we do, place the table in the right place in your room. I wanted to at least guess where the right spot is before they were forced to relocate it to somewhere better. We were trying to keep the flow as seamless as possible because our audience is not necessarily gaming. There's no networking set up. You just start the game. If there's another headset on the network, it'll auto-join it to your session. So that's all automatic. There's no online play because online play is an unsolved problem. And I'll get to that later as well. So our first game is a bunny game. You have basically inflated bunnies, helium bunnies, and they can bounce off everything like balloons. And they are hungry bunnies. They want to eat carrots. So our very first version of this was basically keep up. You know, have you ever seen competitive ballooning on YouTube? It's real funny. They get real hardcore about it. So that was our very first version in the prototype we did last year. Excuse me. And unfortunately, people got really competitive about it. There were people diving across the floor, and it's like, what are you doing? You're in a headset. People forget they're in a headset. So we're like, we do need to dial this down. So we gave everyone their own bunny to chase us around. Excuse me. And that was good. We got it's still competitive, but it's not really ultra competitive. Player height is an interesting problem. We've been testing with, just going to normal events, and parents are like, oh, this game looks awesome. I'm going to put my 6-year-old in it. And they're small, they're real tiny. And the balloon's up here, and you're like, how do I reach the thing? That's a kind of a sort of unsolved problem. Our balloons do have gravity, so they come down eventually. But I've seen like dad pick up their child and hold them up so they could get to, it's very cute. It's actually very cute. But yeah, it's a thing that you need to consider. Not everyone is the same height. The other interesting thing we found with this one in particular, is we did a lot of playtesting early on I mean, it's a multiplayer game, so we did a lot of our playtesting multiplayer. And then we did some single player testing because I think the headsets were broken. And people did not understand it. It turned out that people were learning off each other. They weren't. And as soon as you got a single player, they were like, actually, I don't know what to do. Usually in a group of 4, someone figures it out and then everyone else can see what they're doing and they learn from them. So that's an interesting problem. You can see, this is our early prototype. You can see we used to have written instructions. That's awful, awful. Don't do written instructions. It's it kills the flow when everyone stands around the table, reading out the instructions, figuring out what to do. I mean, it's good at communicating what to do, but it's, in terms of a party game, it's not fun. So we've replaced all of that with little ghost hands that are showing you what the core mechanic is. A little bit like Mario Party, where you can play the game before you play the game. We've got a little bit of that going. So that worked way better. Much better flow, and people understand the game better. Other interesting thing there we tried, because everyone has their own view. In the tutorial, there's a bunny and a carrot, and everyone has a color. I'm red, you're blue, green. And we colored the bunny to your color. So everyone's seeing the same bunny, but you're seeing it in your color, which made sense because there's only one of them. It's just the tutorial. That's all you just to start the game. But people were fighting over it. It's like, what are you doing? You're hitting my bunny. That's my bunny. And I was like, no, it's not. It's my bunny. And it's like, whoops. We probably actually shouldn't have done that because it was starting fights, especially with like a bunch of 14-year-olds playing the game. They're getting really into it. One other interesting thing we tried in this game is we have a mechanic to freeze your bunny. So you can hit an ice carrot at someone else and it freezes you. Initially, what happened is you would turn into a block of ice, like basically turns on normal gravity and it bounces off the floor. What I didn't expect, what I wanted people to do was just start hitting it to, get the ice off. People would pick it up though, and it's like, well, it's a block of ice now. Because the physics properties feel different, they completely interacted with it in a different way, which I wasn't really expecting. Or it makes sense in hindsight, but I would say you need to be really wary of making sure what the behavior, if you change the behavior of an object, it's going to change the way people behave towards it. That's the thing. Anyway, what else have we got? Fishing game. Oh my God. Okay, we're good for time. Fishing game was interesting. So initially this was a game where you get chased around by a bad guy. And we're like, we could probably make this a little bit interesting, Put some water in it, get chased by a shark. That sounds like fun. And if the shark catches, you get eliminated. And in the meantime, to get points, you can pick up fish and put them in this little thing. It worked okay, but people cannot think about two things at once. We're either collecting fish or we're running away from a shark, but we can't do both at once. So people get really invested in picking up the fish and then just be like, why is the game over? I didn't even see what eliminated me. We got rid of the player elimination. Now the shark just eats your fish out from under you, and it works a lot better. The other weird thing is, again, with our tutorial, we forgot to mention that it was a tutorial. So when we put it in like a real world situation, people were just fighting over the one fish next to the one thing that you need to put the fish in to start the game. People were sitting there for like 4 or 5 minutes, smashing fish out of each other's hands. It's like, this is not the game. Just please, one of you, please pick up the fish and put it in the thing. You get a bunch of 14-year-olds, they're not going to do that. The slapping game. This has caused us no world of problems. It worked perfectly in a demo we did last year. We're like, sweet, this game is really simple, this is hyper casual, this is great. But it was too easy. because the table's only of a certain size and people can move their hands pretty quick and they can slap things. So we're like, we need a new mechanic to have something in your way to slow you down a bit. And we tried a bunch of different things. We had a UFO come down and you could slap him out of the way. But people would split their focus between the things and get really confused and not know what's going on. It did not work at all. Yeah. So yeah, you cannot mix different mechanics. We had a slapping mechanic, and yeah. I'm going to move on because we've got lots of things. We had another game. We experimented with climbing. This was interesting. People really struggled with this. They would want to climb the tree themselves, not the little frog at the bottom, which you're controlling as an avatar. There's a little bit of a mental leap to get there. So anyway, we got a bunch of mini games. We had about 8 that we trialed. We've got finger guns, we've got boxing, all sorts of cool things, which will become games at some point. But we just picked the best to turn into the version we've got at the moment, so we can get something out there. But anyway, if you're going to do something in mixed reality, the most important thing you do is play test. It doesn't matter how good a designer you think you are, it doesn't mean anything until you get it in people's hands. I would say design, assuming you'll never fix the 20% of the mechanic that doesn't work. So in our example, we chose a fish because fish are slippery. It's falling out of your hands because it's slippery. It's not. It's falling out of your hands because the physics isn't working. But you don't know that. Everyone says it's slippery and it's like, sweet, problem solved. I would say always add like co-location. I don't care what you're building, add co-location. Make everything interactive. When we had that board game example before, we had a picture of a couch and some other things. The very first thing everybody does is try and interact with everything. So yeah, do that. Make it all interactive and make it intuitive. And the only way you can find out what's intuitive is by playtesting. And always consider the player. The player is your core mechanic in all of the games, not the virtual stuff. By making the player the core mechanic, you're making your game social. Right. So, things you need to consider. People only have so much stamina. Yeah, professional soccer players can run around a field for a while, but most people cannot. Yeah, mobility is an interesting thing. A lot of our games require movement. We've done some testing with people with limited mobility. It's interesting. If you've got one hand, some of our games are a little challenging. You need to factor that in. Player height is an interesting one. The fishing game, we've tested with really young kids, and they're so young that the water levels are like up to here. So we need to dynamically figure out what the right height is for the minimum height player for the water in that game, for example. And importantly, keeping it safe. We've got water, which obscures the floor. Last thing you want to do is obscure obstacles. So yeah, we had to keep that really super transparent so people are going to hurt themselves. So yeah, anyway, what's the future hold? Meta is releasing, finally going to give pass-through access, camera access, which is very exciting. So everything you see on Snapchat will soon be possible on a Quest because you can do computer vision, which is very, very, very cool. I would say if you're not thinking about AI, do. Anything you can create, do to make a more believable situation in your game is going to make it more immersive. And yeah, I would say productivity is an interesting thing. If you're not so into games, mixed reality is probably more suited to productivity than it is to gaming even. Yeah, so this is an idea of some tower defense games where you can do computer vision. So the idea is you could pick up boxes and you could build a fort using real boxes and overlay the graphics. We did start building that. Do research. There are other games out there. Here's a few really good ones. And at the end of the day, the thing that makes it really This is why I like doing stuff in mixed reality, is when you get a real family playing the game, dad's in there playing with the kids, and they're getting really into it. It's just not something you get out of a lot of games, a really proper family game, other than maybe board games. But then, kids aren't as much into board games as the adults. I've got 300 board games, they're great. But yeah, anyway, so that's me. Thank you for listening. I think we're probably out of time for questions, but do we have 5? Okay, anyone got a question? Oh, that's my link tree if you want to get in contact with me. But yeah. Are we going to get a microphone?
Were there any genres that you tried out that you thought would work in mixed reality, but didn't end up quite gelling?
So far, everything we've tried sort of has worked to some degree. I would say there's a lot of other people's stuff, and I'm not sure I really understand why a platform. I mean, I get you can do a 3D platformer in mixed reality, and you can walk around the platformer, but what is it actually adding? What are we getting out of having a platformer in mixed reality? I haven't quite. I mean, there are people who have done them, but it's you can play Mario 3D platformer on a 2D screen, and it's perfectly fine. And so far, I haven't seen that adding anything. And there's a lot of games I've seen doing that. I've seen people who've ported I can't remember the Nintendo beat 'em up game, but Smash Brothers. And it's like, yep, it's Smash Brothers in mixed reality where you can see the room around you, but it's really not much different. Like, I'm not getting more gameplay out of this. It's not more social. So yeah, I would pick real world games. That's what we've been doing. Keep up, whack-a-mole, stuff like that. And we've enhanced them rather than take a computer game and try and figure out how that works in mixed reality. I mean, it's a blue ocean, do whatever you like, because no one's done any of it before. You're a pioneer, you're going out there and figuring it out. It's the Wild West.
Hey, that last slide where you had a family playing, I can't imagine there's many families that have 4 Quest 3s. How did you sort of think about that?
Well, what I did at the beginning of this talk is I went, how many people have more than one Quest 3 in their house? And some people said yes, and I'm like, great, not a problem. No, that's not true. Yeah, it's the elephant in the room. That's why not a lot of people, I'd say there's about 3 people I've found so far who have really invested into co-location. We're definitely ahead of the curve, and that is our biggest risk. That's why we've called the game Game Night, though. What we want people to do is get their friends and family to come around to your house, bring their headsets with them, because no one has more than 2. You might have 2 if someone's upgraded from Quest 2 to Quest 3. And we made sure to support Quest 2, even though it's black and white pass-through, because that's probably, at the moment, the way you're going to experience it. But thank you, Meta, for releasing a 50% cheaper headset last week. That's great. So hopefully that's going to sell loads and will be sweet. Or it could be horrible. And it won't be until 5 years down the track when the AR glasses come out and when everyone has one, you'll be fine. Now you're being a pioneer, and it's risky. I won't deny it.
Just a follow-up question. Did you experiment with any game ideas where you only required one headset that people swap?
Yeah, we initially, I don't know, I'm not sure if it was in that must-have, nice-to-have list, but one of those was pass and play. We wanted to make sure that we could support that. We haven't actually added that yet. But yeah, it seems like a sensible way of doing that. What I have seen people do who are more risk averse than me, because you should be, is have one Quest headset that can play with multiple phones. So Niantic have some good tech for doing that. Yeah, I've seen a few people trying that, and that's probably a more sensible approach for right now. But what people are experiencing on the phones is very different to what you're experiencing on the headset. So it's a very interesting mechanic, and definitely something you should play with. But yeah, co-location.
One more question.
Who's got the best question?
No pressure. Having played with lots of headsets and different MR from Quest 2 to Pico, now to Quest 3,
Yeah.
kind of disappointed by the quality in the Quest 3. Got one quite recently, and the distortion and the overall color is lacking in what I was kind of expecting from
Sure.
latest hardware. You sort of at a point about pass-through relighting. I thought if you could talk to that a little bit about what your thoughts are on that, if you're just brightening it, if you're making color correction, or if you're doing any sort of major changes for to make that a bit more palatable.
We're not. What I have seen, there's a game that launched recently called Starship Home, and pass-through relighting is basically taking the room and coloring it. And what that does is degrade the video quality even more. And they're getting a lot of reviews of like, yeah, the pass-through looks worse than normal. So we don't do any of that. We're restricted by the capability of the headset. What we're finding is that our audience is very casual and they just don't care. And I think Meta understand that as well, because they've released this new headset, which is 1080p versus the Quest 3, which is 4K. This is a very noticeable difference, but you still get a really, really cheap headset and you can play VR and mixed reality. And as long as you can not care about that problem, or you can buy an Apple Vision Pro. That looks really good. And it's only the price of 7 Quest 3s. No, you can get them in Australia though. Apparently they're better than us. But yeah, I snaffled one while I was in America. They're pretty good. They're great for watching movies and not great for games. But then Apple have never been known for games. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you very much. Yeah, go out, make some mixed reality stuff, or just come play ours.